All right, ready to jump into the world of circular economies and zero waste living. I'm super excited to be diving into Regenerate, pioneering the shift to zero waste and circular economies today.
Me too. I have to admit, I was a little skeptical at first, like, how can we really achieve zero waste? But this book, it lays out a really compelling vision.
Yeah, it's not about being perfect. It's about changing how we think about waste and resources. And I love how the book connects those big picture ideas to the everyday things we can actually do.
Exactly. It starts with recognizing that the way we do things now, this linear take, make, dispose model, just isn't sustainable.
It's true. We're basically gobbling up resources, churning out products, using them for a bit, and then tossing them in a landfill. Like, where does it all end up?
And that's the problem, right? We're depleting resources, polluting the planet, and creating mountains of waste. It's a system that's, well, broken.
So where does the circular economy come in? I keep hearing that term, but I'm not sure I totally get it.
It's about shifting away from that linear model and creating a closed-loop system. Instead of things ending up as waste, we keep them in use, kind of like how nature works.
I like that analogy. But how does that actually play out in the real world? Like, say, with something like an old smartphone?
Well, instead of ending up in a landfill, that phone could be designed for easy disassembly. Its components could be recovered and reused to make new phones or other electronics.
So it's not just about recycling. It's about designing products from the start with that circularity in mind.
Exactly. Products that are durable, repairable, and eventually easily disassembled for material recovery. And that's where circular business models come in.
Okay, that sounds interesting. But I'm struggling to picture how a business could actually operate like that.
Well, think about a clothing company. What if they leased their clothes instead of selling them?
Leased clothes. Interesting.
They could design clothes for durability and easy repair. When you're done with them, you return them to the company. They can then refurbish them or recycle the materials. It keeps those materials in use.
Wow, that's a big shift from how we usually think about buying clothes. Seems like a lot would have to change for that to work, not just from businesses, but from us consumers too.
Absolutely. And that's where zero waste living comes in.
Okay, yeah. Zero waste. I have to admit, when I hear that, it feels a little overwhelming.
I get that. It can sound daunting, like this impossible goal of producing absolutely no trash. But the book emphasizes it's not about perfection.
So it's more about minimizing waste as much as possible.
Exactly. It's a journey, not a destination. And there's a really helpful framework. The 5 R's.
The 5 Rs.
Yep. Refuse, reduce, reuse, recycle, and rot. And they're in order of importance.
Okay, so refuse comes first. That's about saying no to things we don't actually need, right?
Yeah, like single-use plastics, extra packaging, those impulse buys that just end up cluttering our homes.
Gotcha. Then there's reduce, which is about, minimizing our overall consumption.
Exactly. Do we really need that new gadget? Can we buy in bulk to cut down on packaging? It's about questioning our needs and simplifying.
I like that. Reuse is next. Giving new life to old things, like I've been using old glass jars to store things in my kitchen.
Perfect example. Repurposing, upcycling, getting creative, extending the life of what we already have.
And then, of course, there's recycle. But it's not as simple as just tossing things in the bin.
Right. Recycling should be a last resort, and we need to understand what can and can't be recycled in our area. Plus, recycling still takes energy and resources, so it's not a perfect solution.
And finally, we have rot, which is all about composting, turning our food scraps and yard waste into something useful.
Absolutely. Composting is a fantastic way to close the loop on organic waste. Instead of sending it to a landfill, we turn it into nutrient-rich soil. So it's really about seeing everything as a resource.
Okay, I'm starting to get the bigger picture here. Okay. Zero waste living isn't just about individual actions. It's connected to this larger idea of creating a circular economy.
Exactly. It's all intertwined, shifting our mindset away from managing waste to eliminating it altogether.
And it's not just about the environment, right? The book also talks about how a circular economy can create jobs and boost local economies.
Absolutely. It's about decoupling economic growth from resource depletion and creating a more resilient system, one that benefits both people and the planet. It's about a more sustainable and equitable future.
I'm already feeling a shift in my own thinking about all of this. It's exciting to see the potential for real change.
Me too. And the book does a fantastic job of showcasing how these concepts are being put into practice around the world. There are some inspiring examples out there.
So it's not just some pie-in-the-sky idea.
Not at all. There are real-world examples of circular economies and zero-waste communities.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued.
I know. I'm ready to dive into those examples.
Me too. Let's see how these principles are playing out on a larger scale.
So, ready to see some of these circular economy principles in action?
Yeah, I'm really curious to see how those big ideas we talked about actually translate into real-world changes.
Well, the book highlights a few key areas, and one that stood out to me is this idea of a bio-based economy.
Okay, a bio-based economy. I'm not totally familiar with that term.
Basically, it's about shifting away from those fossil fuel-based materials and products like plastics made from oil and moving towards renewable biological resources.
So using things like plants or other sustainable alternatives to create the products we need.
Exactly. Think about packaging made from mushrooms or seaweed, or bio-based textiles that can replace synthetic fibers.
Wow, that's really interesting. And the book mentions the Netherlands as being a leader in this area, right?
Yes, they've been actively fostering this bio-based economy, investing in research and development, and creating partnerships to make it happen.
So it's not just about individual companies making changes, but a more collaborative effort across different sectors.
Right. They even have this organization called Circular Bio-Based Delta, specifically focused on accelerating the transition to a bio-based economy.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
Are there any specific examples of how this is playing out in the Netherlands? Like what kinds of products or industries are they focusing on?
One cool example is bio-based asphalt. Traditional asphalt production relies heavily on fossil fuels and produces a lot of greenhouse gases.
Yeah, that makes sense. Not exactly the most environmentally friendly process.
So researchers in the Netherlands have developed this type of asphalt that incorporates lignin. It's a natural polymer found in plants.
Lignin, what does that do?
It acts as a binder in the asphalt, basically replacing the petroleum-based components. So they're essentially using a plant-based alternative.
That's really clever. And has this actually been used anywhere?
Yep, they've already used it in several pilot projects. Bike paths, parking lots, things like that.
So they're actually putting it to the test.
And the early results show it performs just as well as traditional asphalt, but with a lower carbon footprint.
Wow, that's really encouraging.
Mhm.
It shows that these sustainable alternatives can actually work. And what I find interesting is that they're focusing on infrastructure. That's not an area you typically think of as being particularly green.
You're right, and that's what's so exciting about this bio-based economy. It has the potential to impact so many different industries, even those that seem heavily reliant on fossil fuels.
It's really inspiring to see how these innovations are starting to change things. But it's not just about the materials themselves, right? The book also talks a lot about circular business models.
Absolutely. We touched on this a bit earlier, but it's worth diving deeper. Circular business models are all about moving away from that traditional linear model of take, make, dispose, and focusing on creating closed-loop systems.
Can you give me an example? Like, what would that look like in a real business?
One concept is product as a service. Instead of selling a product outright, companies offer it as a service.
Okay, I think I've heard of that, but I'm not sure I totally understand it.
So imagine a company that provides lighting solutions. Instead of selling you light bulbs, they install and maintain the lighting system. And when the bulbs reach the end of their life, the company takes them back, refurbishes or recycles them, and provides new ones.
So the customer is paying for the service of having light rather than owning the physical light bulbs.
Exactly. And this incentivizes the company to design durable, energy-efficient products because they're the ones responsible for maintaining them.
It's like a built-in incentive for sustainability.
Exactly. And it creates a win-win for both the business and the customer.
I can see how that would encourage companies to really think differently about product design, but wouldn't that also require a shift in how we as consumers think about ownership?
Oh, absolutely. It would require us to move away from constantly buying new things and embrace this more service-oriented approach. We'd have to change how we view products, not as things we own, but as services we access.
Yeah, that would definitely be a cultural shift.
It would take time and effort, for sure. But the book argues that it's essential if we want to create a truly sustainable future.
It seems like transitioning to a circular economy would require collaboration and innovation on so many levels, from individuals to businesses to governments and everyone in between.
It's a complex challenge, but it's also incredibly fascinating. And the book showcases a lot of companies and organizations that are already doing this successfully. They're really leading the way and showing what's possible.
I'm eager to hear about some of those real-world examples.
Me too. Let's explore those inspiring stories and see what we can learn from them.
It's amazing to see how these circular economy ideas can be put into practice, from those bio-based materials to rethinking how businesses work. It
Yeah.
really opens up a whole new way of thinking about things.
It is exciting, right? And the cool thing is it's not just theory. The book has all these examples of companies, even entire cities, making it happen.
Yeah, like San Francisco, they have one of the most successful zero waste programs in the US. What's their secret? How do they pull that off?
Well, they took a multi-pronged approach. They've got mandatory composting and recycling programs, and that alone has diverted a ton of waste from landfills.
I remember reading about that. They have separate bins for everything, so it's super easy for residents to participate.
Exactly. But it goes beyond just the infrastructure. They've also got these educational campaigns going on to raise awareness and, help people understand how to actually do it right.
Yeah, because you could have all the bins in the world, but if people don't know how to use them, it's not going to work.
Right, exactly. And they've been really strategic about getting businesses involved, too.
Okay, I'm curious about that. How have they gotten businesses on board with this whole zero waste goal?
One of the key things they've done is implement extended producer responsibility programs.
Extended producer responsibility. What does that mean?
Basically, it means that producers are responsible for what happens to their products at the end of their life.
So instead of just selling a product and forgetting about it, companies have to think about what happens to it after it's used.
Exactly. It encourages them to design products that are more durable, repairable, and recyclable from the get-go.
I see. So it kind of shifts the responsibility from the consumer to the producer, which makes a lot of sense.
Right, and it really drives innovation. San Francisco has even gone a step further, too, hosting zero-waste events and workshops to bring everyone together. Businesses, residents, experts, everyone.
So they've created this whole culture of sustainability, where zero waste is like a shared goal.
Yeah, exactly. And the results speak for themselves. They've managed to divert over 80% of their waste from landfills.
That's amazing. It really shows that it can be done when everyone's committed and working together. But you know what else I found really powerful in the book? The personal stories. Those everyday people who are leading the way and showing us what's possible.
Yes. The book has some really inspiring stories about individuals who've embraced zero-waste living and made it part of their lives.
I'd love to hear about one of those stories.
Well, there's this one about a family who did a year-long zero-waste challenge. They changed their whole lifestyle, composting, making their own cleaning products, the whole 9 yards.
Wow, a whole year. I can only imagine the challenges they faced.
They definitely did, but you know what? They also discovered a sense of empowerment and community through it. They connected with other zero-waste people, learned new skills, and found that living with less could actually be more fulfilling.
It's amazing how these individual actions can inspire others.
Yeah.
It shows that even small changes can make a difference.
Exactly. And it's not just about reducing waste, it's also about the mindset shift that comes with it. It's about valuing resources, simplifying our lives, and reconnecting with our communities.
This whole deep dive has been so eye-opening. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of how our actions impact the world and what we can do to create a better future.
Me too. And the great thing is, it's not all or nothing. We can all take small steps, whether it's refusing single-use plastics, composting, or supporting businesses that are trying to do things differently.
Yeah, every little bit helps. So as we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with this. What's one small step you can take today to embrace a more circular way of living? It could be as simple as bringing your own bag to the grocery store or choosing a product with less packaging. Until next time, stay curious and remember, even small actions can create big change.